Hi, this is Synthchaser from synthchaser.com. I just finished servicing another one of these Moog Sonic Six suitcase synthesizers, the ones that are built into the ugly 70s suitcase shell. And I thought I'd give a functional demonstration of this synthesizer because it is kind of an interesting synthesizer that has some features that aren't really readily available on a lot of the other synthesizers of the era. So I thought this would be interesting. This is a functional demonstration. It's not a musical demonstration. So if you're expecting to hear some beautiful music coming from the synthesizer, you might want to move along because you'll be disappointed. What you will find out is basically how all the controls of the synthesizer work and what they mean. So how to use the synthesizer functional demonstration. So first of all, we've got the speaker here. So it has a speaker output that we turned on with this speaker switch, so with that off. Even though the synthesizer's on, we're not hearing any output. There's also a monitor switch, so I've got it connected to the studio monitor. And you're hearing that through the microphone of the camcorder, so not even through a mixer or anything like that. So we'll listen to the monitor output for the duration of this video. So let's start with the simplest way to get some sound from this keyboard, and that's the direct output mixer. So we can turn Oscillator A on. There's two oscillators, A and B is what they're called. So we can turn Oscillator A on, and Oscillator A will always be droning. We can turn Oscillator B on, and Oscillator B will always be droning. We can turn both of them on. Oscillators there, A and B. We can also turn the ring modulator on. And always have the ring modulator droning. Well, that's not super interesting, so we probably want to use the VCF and the VCA paths like in most analog synthesizers of that era. In that case, we're selecting the sources here on the source mixer. So right now we're going through the VCA and the VCF, which I'll get back to after we cover our tone sources. So like I said, we have two oscillators, A and B. Right now we're listening to a mix of both of them. We can set the mix here. I'll make here's only A and only B, and we're mixing them as such. So let's take a look at just one of the oscillators. So we'll look at Oscillator A first. So we have an octave select switch. So we'll go up 2 octaves, down 2 octaves. We have a pitch control, so we can fine tune or bend the pitch. We have a few waveforms to select from. We have a sawtooth waveform, a triangle waveform, and a pulse waveform. And this quality knob sets the pulse width of that. So when it's all the way down like it is now, it's 50% pulse width or a square wave. And as we raise the quality, the square wave turns more into a pulse wave. So those are our waveforms. We can modulate this with these two knobs here. So we can modulate it with the contour generator. Contour generator is over here. This is the equivalent of the ADSR on other synthesizers. So let's turn Oscillator A on. We'll modulate it by the contour generator, and we'll add some attack. So you can hear the pitch of this oscillator increasing during the attack portion of that envelope all the way up to the sustain level of the envelope. And then this sets the depth of that modulation. there's also the what's called XY modulation, and we'll detour over here to this XY section. X and Y are LFOs, and this has a very unique modulation scheme in that you have two separate LFOs. There's a master control rate and then individual control rates on the LFOs, and then you can mix the LFOs together. So right now I'll turn the knob so it's all the way over to X. And you can hear this LFO, waveform generator X, is modulating the frequency of the oscillator. If I turn it all the way over to Y, only this one, waveform generator Y, is modulating the oscillator. But if I move it somewhere in between, I can get really far out there kind of modulation sounds because it's mixing these two LFOs. And that you can't get those kind of sounds on most traditional analog synthesizers of this era. So showing more of the waveform generators, so there's different shapes that you have. There's a sawtooth waveform, reverse sawtooth, triangle, and a square wave. And as you may have noticed, both of these controls, the master control, contour generator. So both of those controls, when you're in this master switch mode, affect the speed of the LFO. When you're in contour generator mode, then the contour generator affects the speed of the LFO, and that's quite interesting. So I'll turn on Oscillator A, and we'll add some attack. So this is it with no envelope. We add some attack, and you hear the LFO speeding up towards the end. You hear the LFO speeding up toward the end of the attack portion of that envelope. And that, again, is a feature that I don't really see on any other synthesizers that I can think of. I'm sure someone will correct me in the comments. So those are contour and master mode. And waveform Y works the same way. You have sawtooth, sawtooth, triangle, and square, and your LFO is controlled by both the individual and the master slider, or you can be in contour mode and have the contour generator affect the speed of the LFO. So that's really creative, and this again selects the depth of that modulation. So it's very subtle, a little less subtle, and definitely not subtle. So that's your modulation options. Your Oscillator B has all the same controls. So octave switch. And then here, this has an interesting knob. So when it's clicked to the left right now, and the pitch is in what's called concert mode, so it's tuned to Oscillator A. So here's Oscillator A and B. I could also hit the switch and turn the knob to the zero portion there, and it's also tuned to Oscillator A. But this is just a lot easier than trying to fiddle for the exact spot where that makes it perfectly in tune. This is perfectly in tune because it's calibrated to be in tune. But you can use this to detune oscillator B from oscillator A. And there, it's back in tune. You've got your waveforms. You've got your sawtooth waveform, which we've been listening to, triangle waveform, and square wave. Again, when quality is 0, it's a square wave, and then you can decrease or increase the pulse width with the quality knob. For modulation options, you have your same XY options that you had for the Oscillator A. So that was the same as Oscillator A, but then here you have Oscillator A can be used as a modulation source for Oscillator B. So you can generate some ring modulator type sounds with that. So this knob here is keyboard scaling. So right now it's all the way over to the right on diatonic, so it's your pitch is doubling every octave, but essentially you can reduce that all the way down to almost the keyboard being off. So what this is doing is when it's in diatonic mode, it's 1 volt per octave. So one octave on the keyboard is generating 1 volt of control voltage. So your oscillator will double in pitch because your oscillator doubles in pitch for every octave, for every volt it goes up. And what this is doing is reducing the volts per octave of the keyboard. So you can have one octave on the keyboard be less than doubling the frequency, and you can adjust that to whatever you want with that knob. This keyboard's also duophonic, so when I have it in high note priority, it's in monophonic mode. So if I press a higher note, both oscillator A and B move over to the new high note priority key that I've pressed. When I'm in off mode, oscillator B is whatever key I'm pressing, and oscillator A is just a fixed frequency. So you can hear that's not changing because it's detached from the keyboard, but B is changing. When I'm in low note priority, it's actually duophonic. So when I press a single key, both of these oscillators are playing the key that I'm pressing. When I press the low key, oscillator A is assigned to the low note that I'm pinning down, the lowest note that I'm pinning down. So it's duophonic, kind of like the ARP Odyssey or the later ARP 2600s. But it's interesting because you have this selection mode where you can select between monophonic, duophonic, or just detaching oscillator A from the keyboard entirely. So that covers our oscillators. I guess while we're on the topic of oscillators, we can swing down here. There's a pitch bender. There's a glissando, which is like glide. So that sets your glide time. There's volume control there. Anyway, back to our tone sources. So we've covered oscillator A and oscillator B. So I'm going to turn this off in the mix. Ring modulator. So that's this section here. So I'll turn ring modulator on. And you can select your tone sources. So you can have Oscillator A and B. So that's your traditional ring modulator type sounds. You can have, instead of Oscillator B, you can use an external input, which is plugged in down here. Instead of Oscillator A, you can switch over to your XY oscillator mix. And that's kind of interesting sounding. So that's your ring modulator. There's, again, the external input can be fed in and put in the mixer so it can go through the filter and the articulator or VCA. There's a noise generator, so we have white noise and a pink noise. And that's not too super interesting. So those are our tone sources. And then we have our contour generator and articulator. So articulator is like the VCA, and the contour generator is your envelope generator. And these envelopes work a little weird. Normally, on most synthesizers, if you have a longer attack and you press a key and release it, it will end your envelope. But on the Sonic 6, if we set a longer attack, it finishes the attack portion of the envelope before disposing of the envelope. If I'm holding the key down, then I'm in the sustain part of the envelope when I'm in this mode here. This mode on the switch to the left has a sustain portion, so when you're pinning the key, the note will sustain. If I switch the switch to the right, even if I hold the key down, when the attack portion of the envelope is done, it'll begin the decay or release portion of the envelope and go away. With this no sustain mode, with attack and decay, just with attack, and with no attack and decay. When we're in the sustain mode, basically this has no attack and no decay, so when I'm pinning the key it's in sustain mode, and when I let go it ends. With attack, with a little bit of attack, and then with no decay, when I release the key it goes away. If I add decay, I release the key and it begins the decay portion until it fades away. So that's that. Trigger inputs, so you'll notice now, even though I'm pressing a key on the keyboard, nothing's actually triggering this contour generator. You have to have this keyboard switch up in order for the keyboard to actually trigger the envelope generator. So you can also trigger the envelope generator via what says Gen X and Gen Y. So Gen X is obviously the LFO waveform generator X. So let's add a little bit of attack here. So this is only generating a trigger, it's not generating a gate, so it makes no difference whether you're in this mode or this mode when you're using these, because there's no equivalent of holding a key down on the keyboard. It's always just going to go through the attack portion and then the decay portion and end. We have the Gen Y, so that's using this LFO. Okay, here we go. Oh, we're in generator mode. Okay. So now we're using this. We can use both of them. so that's that. So we're in we're back to normal mode. You can bypass the VCA. So when you have this switch over, the VCA is always open. So it's sort of like this, except you can choose your sources here, and you can also run it through the filter. So coming up lastly on the filter, so there's a cutoff frequency and resonance. So we've been listening to this the whole time with the filter wide open. We can sweep the cutoff frequency, close the filter, and open it. And then we can set the resonance. So what I'll do is I'll sweep the cutoff frequency at various resonances on our way up. So this goes all the way into self-oscillation, so I turn all the tone sources off. And we're getting that sine wave from the self-oscillating filter. And then there's some modulation options down here to set the cutoff frequency, to modulate the cutoff frequency of the filter, and notably is the keyboard. So here, now our control voltage from the keyboard is modulating this cutoff frequency control voltage, so we can actually use this as a sine wave oscillator and use the filter as a sine wave oscillator. What else can we do? We can use the XY. Let's get some tone sources here. So we're using the XY. Waveform generators as a modulation source for the filter. It sounds, when you have it like using both X and Y, it kind of sounds like a sample and hold, but it's not a sample and hold because there's a repeating pattern if you listen to it. You can use the contour generator as a modulation source, so let's add some attack. And you can hear the, I put it into self-oscillation, you can hear the cutoff frequency, or the frequency of the filter going up during the attack portion and going down during the decay portion. And this sets the depth of that. So that is that. And with that, I think we've covered all the features of the Sonic 6. It's a quirky synthesizer, and I think you know, it uses terms like, you know, the waveform Gen X and Y and Articulator and all this stuff that seems strange. I guess this was designed for educational use, to be used in the classroom type setting to teach people about synthesis. But even though it's kind of quirky and funky, it does have some unique capabilities that other synthesizers of the era just don't have. So you're able to get sounds out of it that just aren't available elsewhere. Whether you can put that to use musically outside of just, you know, an educational setting, well, that's for someone with more musical skills than me to figure out. But this is the Sonic 6, how it works and what it does. So I hope you found this interesting. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.